New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Welcome to Ministers Talking a weekly program where Rev BRZ and Rev Z and their guests chat about current affairs. Welcome to Ministers Talking a weekly program where Rev BRZ and Rev Z and their guests chat about current affairs, world events, spiritual principles, and any old they want to talk about. Based on the New Thought philosophy and ancient wisdoms, Ministers Talking shares a visionary perspective of the evolving spiral called spiritual living. Join us each week as we explore the emerging paradigm of life on planet Earth and beyond.
And good morning, dear ones. Reverend Robert over here.
Rev Z right here.
And I'm Reverend Karen Frost.
And we're a few ministers talking shit today. We do want to welcome our special guests. For those that join us every week, thank you for being with us. This is the New Thought Media Network. This program happens every Friday at 7 a.m. Mountain Time. And we, when we do have guests, we don't always have guests, but we love to because it really enriches the conversation. Today we have with us Reverend Karen Frost. She's the assistant minister at the United Life Center for Spiritual Living in Oklahoma City. Also the co-founder and senior minister of Spirit Uncensored, an organization that teaches love as a religion. Spirit Uncensored hosts virtual services on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Central Time. And Reverend Karen also serves on the Centers for Spiritual Living Global Themes team. She works full-time as a case manager at Sisu, I hope I'm saying that properly, Youth Services, which is an LGBT plus affirming youth homeless shelter. Prior to Oklahoma City, Reverend Karen served as a TV creative executive at Juvie Productions. That's Viola Davis and Julius Tennan's production company in Los Angeles. At Juvie, Reverend Karen developed TV projects told from marginalized perspectives. Examples include First Ladies on Showtime, Wild Seed, which is being developed at Amazon, and House of Chow, which is in development at HBO. You can learn more about her at revkarenfrost.com. Reverend Karen, welcome to Ministers Talking Chat.
Thank you. Happy to be here. And good to know that I can actually curse because there was all of these bleeps in the intro. I was like, I have to be uncensored here. So good to know I can.
Yes, you are more than happy to be welcome to be uncensored on this program. So, folks, we've been having a wild conversation in the background of today's program in preparation. Lots going on, but we want to welcome back Rev Z. You were off on a little business last week, so welcome back, sir.
Yes. Glad to be back. The last 3 weeks or so, I've been gallivanting across the country, and I'm glad to be home and not gallivanting for at least another 3 weeks. So glad to be back, and let's get it started.
Let's get it started. Exactly. Rev Z was at the Celebrating Our Soul conference at Unity Village just a week or 2 weeks now ago almost. And Reverend Karen, you were there as well. So before we get into our main topic, tell us a little bit. What was that like for you? We were media partners. He was doing stuff and on the team, but you were an attendee, as it were. Tell us a little bit about your experience there.
Well, before actually, I want to give a little background that like in 2020, when we were having this big conversation about race together as a country, I realized how little education I'd had around Black history and within New Thought. I'd never taken a Black history in New Thought class. And so I took one through the Universal Foundation for Better Living, and they were at this conference. And I didn't know anything about Unity's history, specifically with racism. And I learned a lot about that. And, you know, this conference really felt like, especially with it being hosted at Unity, felt like Unity's acknowledgement of racism and like their very first effort in rectifying how they had treated Black ministers in the past. And so this moment really felt like all of the New Thought organizations really coming together and having a conversation that we've needed to have for decades.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yes.
Yeah.
I happened to be at the International New Thought Alliance conference in Chicago a few weeks prior to that, which was at the Christ Universal Temple, the house that Johnny Coleman built. And I had a very similar experience, learned so much about the history of not what was prior to New Thought, what not New Thought is built upon, but the history of the organizations itself. And it's good to see that we're doing the work of healing those past transgressions. Let's call it that.
Yeah. And I would say, closing that out is that I was there, I did a workshop, well attended, great energy, looking forward to the next one. But I would advise everyone, if you can go out, and I don't have the URL, see if I can find it, to go out and watch the Sunday service given by Reverend Dr. Sheila McKeithen, which is on the Unity site. Outstanding. It was they used that day to close out the program. Great music, but her talk about New Thought in general, Black New Thought, you gotta listen. And if it doesn't inspire you, then I'm gonna do something, but I don't know what yet. Come back to me.
Exactly. All right. So, big story of the week, folks. If you haven't heard this one, you probably just haven't been paying attention, and that's okay. For a lot of people in America, this story has no impact whatsoever. But for a lot of people in America, this has a huge impact. We are canceling, forgiving. I don't know how we would want to frame this, because depending on what word I use is going to force you into one perspective or another. But ultimately, the federal government is agreeing to erase student debt for a large number of borrowers. Now, it's not all of their debt. It's not every dime. It's not immediate. There's still a lot of loopholes and a lot of things that have to be finalized. But we're in the process of helping a group of people that have been straddled with what I will label as predatory and oppressive debt in trying to get an education. I didn't take student loans and therefore haven't dealt in this world. Reverend Karen, we talked a little bit. You did take some loans in your education. Z, we haven't checked in with you yet, but what do we see here? Is this a good thing? Is this elitist? Is this just giving more money back to the white folk? What's really happening here? What do we see as a New Thought perspective?
So if I could, having been a college professor for a few years and understanding that from that perspective, having been a student, having been a professor, having had 3 kids go through the university system, I think this is a great thing, right? Because if we can bail out companies, right, and we say, all right, well, you bail out the company, you save jobs. Fair enough. No argument there. But this economy, this country is built on the back of the majority of the people who right now are struggling with loans. And they're worried about they can't buy cars and they can't buy refrigerators and houses. Well, that's because they're paying $300 and $400 a month on student loans. Now, with rising rents and everything else rising, most kids aren't coming out of the college making, 6-figure jobs. So to try to wheel all that is tough. $10,000 may not sound like a lot, but in some cases, that's a down payment for a home with some assistance program. And now you're going to sell some more refrigerators and washers and paint jobs and whatever. So I think it's great. Of course, like anything, it has its point counterpoint, but that's with anything, right? And the pundits will always find something wrong with even, a great piece of pie. Where the pie ain't big enough, you ain't got enough crust. Excuse me. So we're not going to worry about them. We know there's some issues that need to be worked out, but I think to get rid of $10,000 in debt for people who have who make less $125,000 or less, and if they got a federal loan, and it's $20,000 if they got a Pell Grant. That's going to put a lot of money back into the economy from my perspective.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. I think of what the cost of tuition is for college now, and the fact that this is just now happening in 2022 is representative of what people have been paying for tuition all of this time. 10K is a drop in the bucket for a whole lot of people, but as you all have said, that drop is significant. And I think the biggest thing out of this isn't just the forgiveness of that 10K, is the fact that what comes along with these bill is stopping these predatory practices. One of the things that we talked about offline was how so many people have posted about what their with how their payment structure has looked, where they started off, say, with 100K worth of debt. They've been making payments for 20 years, and now they have 101K worth of debt, that regardless of the amount of payments they've been making over the years, nothing has changed. It's kind of like the way that our mortgages are set up, right? Where you're paying for years and all of that is going to interest. You don't even get to the capital until much later. And so just the way that loans themselves are structured, I think that the fact that we're addressing this together as a country and not putting 18-year-olds who are making this decision on investing in themselves and saying, here's a whole lot of debt. And I think, also to your point, Rev Z, what you said of how people are not graduating, it's not even six figures. People are college graduates are being paid under the poverty value when they come out of college, and it takes a really long time. I am 41 years old and I have yet to make $55,000 a year with a master's degree and working as an executive in Hollywood. So I would say that the way that we are paying people in the United States is significantly low, and it takes a long time for a college graduate to be able not just to recoup the investment of their education, but to be able to live, to have enough money to invest in a home, that the millennials and Gen Z are less likely to buy homes. They're not even buying laundry detergent. They're making laundry detergent from home. So, what you're saying about the economy, it is absolutely necessary.
Yeah. Well, and a key thing, my oldest daughter, she finished school, I don't know, 20 something years ago. Her oldest son has graduated from college, and believe it or not, she's still paying off her student loans. That is ridiculous.
Yes.
And it's almost another way. I hate to use the S word, but it's almost another way of slavery, right? Or sharecropping. Let me clean it up a little bit. It's definitely like a sharecropping mentality where once we get you, you're never getting out of here. And so I think, a key component will be, in addition to that, and now this is going to be put the onus on some of the people need to become more financially educated. And I know for sure in the minority communities where managing debt and paying bills and those kinds of things are not often talked about in the home because the parents or the caregivers or guardians are not duly educated in financial literacy. So here's an opportunity to do a great big thing, right? We can reduce some debt. We can start pushing, and they are. I know in the African-American community is being pushed because there's a lot of money rolling around. But how to become financially literate, how to look at doing wills, how to look at investing, how to look at insurance policies, things that people poo-poo, but they set up a legacy for people. I mean, how often now do we see people pass away and then there's a GoFundMe account to try to bury them? I mean, a life insurance policy will take care of that. And since we all going to check out, ain't none of us going to stay here, a life insurance policy is going to pay, right? Because we all checking out.
Well, we trust they're going to pay. I think that's part of it is the younger kids today, they've seen what happened to their folks. They've seen what was done to their grandparents, and whether it was the housing crisis of 08 or the impending crash of the housing market, whether it's student debt, whether it's traditional unsecured credit card debt, they have witnessed how the establishment predominantly is a predator, is preying on people and for money. For the greed, for self-wealth, for self-interest. And I think a lot of kids, rightfully so, want to have nothing to do with those. So you say life insurance and they say old white guy trying to take my money. And I can I can feel into that. And I have my life insurance, right? But and I trust it'll still be there to pay when the time comes. I think that, to me, this points to a need to restructure. We were sharing before the show. So I've got a kid just starting college, first term, living away for the first time. And the numbers are staggering. But the school is giving us so much back. And the thousands of dollars that the school is saying, well, we're going to give you in organization or in organizational scholarships. Okay, so that's really just money you don't need to charge me in the beginning, but you're gonna.
Right.
And it feels like, and I know this is true in many places, but even the best of schools seem to have gone to being money makers rather than educators. They're in it for the profits. They're in it to sell T-shirts and sweatshirts. Yeah, if some kids get educated along the way, cool, but that ain't on me. And I heard a piece yesterday, the day before, somebody suggested schools should be required to stay connected with their graduates for up to 10 years. And if after 10 years, the person isn't making a livable wage from the education they received, then the institute should pick up and pay off their loans. Wild, crazy ideas, but when we hear stories of people that have been paying in for 20 years and still owe exactly what they owed 20 years ago, I think it's time to try something radical.
I'm going to speak to the colleges part. I was a college admissions counselor at Columbia College in Chicago about 10 years ago. And Columbia College, Chicago, at that point, I can't say about today, was the least expensive private arts college in the country. And tuition in 2009 was like $18,000. And I can tell you that having buildings in Chicago, the equipment that's required for an art school, there's also administrative costs and things like that, that Columbia was hemorrhaging money at the time. And there was a big question. You mentioned the economic crisis of 2008. I was there in 2009. So we were definitely in a space of economic crisis, but arts education, just as an example, like, is that going to pay off? It was about providing access to education. So the kind of people that had an arts kind of brain, but I actually spent a lot of time in high schools in the South Side of Chicago, and to your point, Robert, there were a lot more scholarships for youth who had that financial need. So that's why we spent some time. And it was really about giving access to education. And I remember I lived on the west side of Chicago, and I walked into a Walgreens one day, and the person who was checking me out said, you talked to me about going to Columbia. I was there for a semester. I can't afford this semester, so I'm taking this semester off. But, talked about the value of that experience of having been to college, seeing what it was like. I don't know if that person ever had the opportunity to graduate or not, but it's not a college's responsibility so the arts industry itself is so challenging to break into and find financial success for, that it wouldn't be feasible for a college to, we couldn't provide arts education if we had those sorts of requirements and restrictions. And so, like, everything we're saying about financial literacy, it's really about the fact that we are giving 18-year-olds the power to make some big financial decisions, and we've made no effort to educate them on what these loans mean, what these forms are that they are signing, and even what entry level jobs look like and how much they get paid, to even wrap their minds around what kind of life that they're stepping into when they make this decision stepping out of high school. We don't give these people they don't have the right to buy alcohol from the store, but they can agree to sign their life away for a $300,000 loan.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead, Robert.
I was saying, and then if they get caught with a little bit of alcohol and go out and have a drink, then all kinds of hell breaks loose and makes it even tougher and tougher and tougher.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that brings up 2 points to me, right? So number one, both of my kids were fortunate enough and smart enough, a lot smarter than me, to go to good private schools, one with the University of Chicago, one with the Washington University in St. Louis. And I know, and they were, they went from like 2016 to right now. So they've been going to school for a long time, and I've been paying for a long time. But I know for all of those schools, they have now begun, and they have the money to do it. If kids can qualify and go through the rigors to get into school, if you make I'm not sure if it's nationwide or just Chicago and St. Louis, but if your family makes less than 125 or less, I think it is, you can go to that school for free, right? To both of those schools. They have programs now. So, and I'm saying that to say, parents or guardians, we have to begin looking at, we start looking at sports, hoping that a kid is going to make it to the pro at 8 years old, right? We never look at the college. We have to start looking at colleges and looking at our kids and finding out what their interests are very early to begin to at least introduce them. Don't wait till the senior year of high school to visit a college. Start visiting college in middle school as a vacation trip. Oh, and begin to cultivate. Again, we in New Thought, we talk about this seed soil plant. We have to cultivate these things. We got to plant the seeds. We got to cultivate them and then prune them when they need to be pruned. And that's what we have to do, I think.
I was 11 years old when I knew that I wanted to work in television, and my parents had no idea how to do that. Who knows? When your 11-year-old says, like, I want to be the next Norman Lear, he was the guy, because he produced shows of social conscious and that were entertaining. And I did a project about him for a history fair, and I was like, yes, that's what I want to do. My parents didn't know what to do, and the internet was in its infancy then, so Google didn't exist, so it was where do they look, what do they do? There was no way of knowing that assistant salary in LA was below the living wage, and that the way that people break into Hollywood in general is that their parents subsidize their living costs. There's a reason why Hollywood executives and writers generally come from higher classes of income, and it's because the barriers to entry are financial. And so it's not Googleable today. And so there's definitely some information on how there was a like protest of assistant salaries a couple years ago, and there have been some shifts. I think as of today, it's far livable than it was when I started out in Hollywood in 2011. But I graduated from college in 2003, and none of that was knowable. And the other thing is that we have no idea what shifts are going to take place in the country we live in, right? Like when I was in college, social media had just started, and there are people now who are making a full-time living in that industry that did not exist 20 years ago. So when it comes to making an effort to prepare your children for a workforce, that the workforce their parents grew up in is going to be very different than their kids. My mom gave me some bad advice about my resume in college. So parents aren't really equipped to do things like that. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, you made a point there that I didn't want to lose about, what's happening in the future. And some people will take offense to this, but when we look at the old model of education, right, there was the liberal arts approach, right? That liberal arts approach worked because they understood, I believe, that the landscape would change. But if I give you the reading, the writing, and the arithmetic, right, You could have in the history, right? You could shift into anything because you got the math if we go in STEM. We got the history, English, and writing if you're going into literature, or if you need to deal with people or come up with policies. And then you can add on specialties onto that, which is what they did. And so that's why you still see a lot of private schools, large and small, they're still considered liberal arts programs. They take Socratic methods of teaching where you learn to talk and do point counterpoint and do these kind of things that are needed to be effective and efficient in an ever-changing world. So I think we definitely have to get to that. And make sure that those things are taught, and then they'll shift.
I appreciate you saying that. And I feel like something that's really coming through to me through this conversation is how our, like, let's say 5th grade through senior year of high school, we are not teaching youth anything that is valuable for them. That college education gives them what they need, that liberal arts education. What are they doing in 5th grade through senior year of high school that has anything to do with what they're doing in the world? And it's got to be really frustrating for kids to be sitting in these classrooms learning information that we learned in college wasn't at all true. My American history class in college taught me the truth about American history, where essentially elementary school and high school was all propaganda. And so it just leads to that, what we're understanding about these generation, the current generation, is they have access to information that the curriculum in schools, we're having this conversation about banning books once again, that 5th grade through high school is essential. That education is not valuable. And if college is the only kind of education that's valuable and it comes with this price tag that's unattainable with predatory loans attached to it, we're basically setting ourselves up for failure as a institution in America. And I think that's some of the issues that we're having today. The reason that we're having these debates about who deserves college forgiveness, college loan forgiveness, and who doesn't, is representative of the fact that as a country we are wholly uneducated.
And one thing you bring there, go ahead, Robert.
I just want to jump in on that because I didn't spend a lot of time in college. I was too immature for the responsibility at the time, but I spent a year or one semester. But what I remember the most is I was completely unaware of the LGBT community. And not just, I wasn't aware. I was aware there were people that were gay. I was aware there were people that were called lesbians. At that time, there were people called trannies, and forgive the slur to everyone out there that is trans. But I didn't understand anything about a vast majority of the people that I would then be surrounded by and living with and connecting with and eating with and learning with. So I see it as the same thing. If we can't talk about these issues in middle school and high school, kids are going to end up in college and there's still going to be gay folk there when they get to college, and they're going to be thrown into so much more in such a tumultuous time in their life that so economics, social issues, human interaction, human sexuality, all these things need to be discussed. Maybe not, we're not teaching you how to do it, but we're discussing that these aspects exist in our lives. And before we run out of time, I want to circle back on one other thing, and that's youth sports. I got nothing against youth sports, but as you were sharing, Z, it struck in my head, what if everybody that had a kid in youth sports took 10% of their semester tuition to those sports and put it in a college fund? What if we actually did start teaching our kids to save for college, like really, truly start from the beginning? And yeah, you can do soccer this term, but we're also going to put this much in your college fund. Or yes, you can go get a job this summer, but you're going to put this much into your college fund, because we all know the power of compounding interest.
Yeah. And I know we don't have enough time, so I'm gonna do a shotgun blast here real quick. In that, that's great. We have to begin, and I know in the African American community in general, and I know in my family specifically, who I have all sets of parents coming out of grandparents coming out of slavery, or great grandparents coming out of slavery. They understood that education was the way out, right? And they pushed it. They may not have been able to afford it, but they definitely said, you are going. It was an expectation that was not even thought about. I was going to college. Yep. And so that's number one. We have to begin to plant that seed, like you said, and begin to be more whatever in terms of what we put the money into: music, art, education. The other thing is, pandemic showed us that our school system has failed to a large degree. And I know I'm not here to advocate any kind of system, but my kids went through a Montessori system. My younger kids did anyway. And the great thing about that Montessori system is 3 grades together. So you learn a lot of the social skills because you're dealing with younger and older people. You're dealing with people that are smarter or lesser than you in some subjects. So you may be, good in reading. You may be teaching a 3rd grade, and you may be bad in the 3rd grade and may be teaching a 1st grader math. But it creates an environment that decreases the competition and it pushes working together. And that's what so now that's why we're in these school loan problems. I think at the last point, people are trying to get into good schools so they can get out and get a good education, but they can't afford it. And they haven't been prepared to stay there and learn when they do. So they get the debt, they drop out, or they get out and making not enough money to pay it. And now we're in the situation we're in now. So good for Biden administration on dropping these loans. I'm happy about the whole thing.
Wonderful. Beautiful. So it seems like we're into final thoughts already here, folks. And we do often run a few minutes over on this show. So Reverend Karen, how about for you? Some final thoughts for the program.
Because this is ministers talking shit, I think it's important to note that, like, with all of these shifts, all of the debate that takes place in the countries that we live in, all of it is super healthy. We are not supposed to agree on everything. And every time any administration makes a decision, someone is going to be mad about it. And I'm glad that the 3 of us recognize that this is what is best for the country, and that is laying a foundation for us to be more financially healthy and more financially stable.
Beautiful. Thank you. Very, very well said. Yes. Folks, we often talk, there is a spiritual solution to every human problem. And that's what we look to do here on Friday mornings. We're not here trying to solve it. We're not here trying to tell you what to think, but we are here to say, let's think. And I learn things every day. I learned from Reverend Karen today a little bit more about a behind the scene perspective of what it's like to be in a college environment and to work on the college's behalf. We get a chance through these conversations to learn a little bit more about each other, and I trust cast a vision for where we're headed in the future. I believe New Thought provides kids with the opportunity on how to think. And when I look at my own kids, and as I've said, I've got a freshman in college, as I look at the decisions he's making, I feel proud because he's thinking through and not just going along to get along, but following the truth, the alignment, the divine principles to help guide us and lead us into proper and good, and I trust beneficial and abundant solutions and decisions around these things. So thank you so much for being with us, Reverend Karen. I hope you'll come back and visit again sometime.
I would love to.
Thank you. Z, we'll be back on Tuesday with New Thought Today. If you want a longer discussion, folks, join us on that. Our guest this week is going to be Reverend Dr. Ruth Miller. We're looking forward to that. And before we go, we want to say thank you to our sponsors and and everyone that makes this network possible. So please don't go anywhere. Just give us one more minute to say thank you to everyone that makes this financially possible.
On behalf of everyone at New Thought Media Network, thank you for being a member of our virtual family. Your financial contributions help share the New Thought message with people from around the world. Please visit and contribute at www.ntmedia.org/donate. New Thought Media Network. Come be you. And please like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, peace and blessings.
And thanks for being with us, folks. Please stay tuned. We have a full day of programming here today. Be Your Own Hero with Sekou Wrights is up next. Morning prayers at 8:15. The morning sip with Rev Melissa at 8:30. Practicing Infinite Possibilities with Lindsay at 10 o'clock Mountain. 1 o'clock is The Joy Show with Reverend B. I'll be back with the good news at 5 o'clock, and Pastor Mike will be here at 6 with the Fireside Chat. We thank you for being with us. Reverend Karen, thanks again for being with us. We look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you.
Folks, have a great weekend. Z, make it a good one. I lost my video. We'll find it here in a second. There it is. Till next time, folks. Peace and blessings.
Peace and blessings.
And thanks for listening to this week's episode of Ministers Talking. We'll be back again next week with more commentary on current affairs, world events, and any other our ministers want to talk about. And if you found value here, please share our with your friends. Until next time, peace and blessings.